So today we have another good one for you on the Crucible. We've got Will Dunbar. He's going to tell you a story. We'll get into his career a little bit, but then he's going to tell you about his Crucible moment, which really has propelled him forward, and even to this day is a moment that I think we all can learn from. So let's get into it. Will's a native of Philadelphia and completed his public school education at Bartram Motivation High School. He attended Lincoln University of Pennsylvania, where he received a bachelor's degree in political science and criminal justice. Upon completing that degree, Will continued his education at the University of Pennsylvania, receiving a master's degree in public policy from Fels School of Government. Will's passion to help others has led him to a career in public service, where he began that career under the leadership of U.S. Congressman Shaka Fattah. One of his most notable accomplishments while working for Congressman Fattah was his leadership role in the Core Philly Scholarship Program. Will's commitment to education equality for underserved students was the driving force for the creation of this program, which helped over 15,000 high school students go to college. This citywide initiative provided $27 million in scholarships and not only helped students enter into college, but also assisted with resources to make them successful throughout college. With the desire to have continuous impact on the city of Philadelphia, the state, and the country, Will founded Dunbar Public Affairs and Associates in 2014. Since that time, the firm and Will have garnished recognition as a steadfast change maker and a trusted advisor to many of the region's key decision makers. Will also strives to make a positive impact on the community through volunteer roles. For instance, Will currently serves as a trustee for his alma mater, Lincoln University of Pennsylvania. He's a board member at Springside Chestnut Hill Academy, and he's also a board member of Opera Philadelphia. Most recently, Will was recognized as one of the 150 most influential Philadelphians by Philadelphia Magazine, and he was also honored as Who's Who in Government Relations by City and State Pennsylvania. And the Philadelphia Tribune has recognized Will as one of the 10 under 40 most influential African Americans in Philadelphia. Woo! Got some influence, brother.
They just couldn't find anybody else.
They couldn't find anybody else to do it? That's all right. Well, they found you, and you've been doing it. So, I mean, look, congratulations on all of that. I mean, I think for me, I mean, one of the most powerful things is that idea that you help put together a program that not only helps students get, into college, but help them throughout college, right?
Yeah.
Like, because that's not, getting in is only one part of it. So, look, man, congratulations on all that and all of your success. But, thanks for coming to the Crucible. Right?
I'm happy to be here. I'm super proud of the endeavor that you're doing, and wanted to be a part of this dope effort at the early end, so that when you super Lord, see, I was on it first.
I was on there, look at my episode. Yeah, no, I mean, that's, look, it's, this whole thing is about giving, folks like yourself, highly successful folks like yourself, an opportunity to have a little bit of vulnerability, right? Like we talk, most people will see you, or even, myself for that matter, or folks who have achieved some level of success, and they'll only see that sheen, right? They only see the polished version of it. And so I want to give people an opportunity to teach others through the lessons that, you might have learned internally, but others couldn't see. Yeah. And so I'd love to talk to you about your Crucible moment, your severe test, whether it was a great failure or what have you. Why don't you share with the audience what that Crucible moment, or what one of those Crucible moments might have been for you?
Yeah, I think there's been several, but the one that stands out the most is that, what my bio doesn't say, is that in 2012, really starting in 2011, I ran for state representative in Philadelphia, in Port Richmond section, like the 177th legislative district. And thought that was like, hey, I'm working for elected officials, wanted to be in politics, thought that I'd be best served like some of my peers and to go to the State House. And so the area that I was living in at the time was the Fishtown, Port Richmond area, which was represented by a Republican at the time, John Teller, who had been there for 30 years.
Yeah.
Really, one of my things I remember on the campaign trail was saying like, hell, he had been elected since the year that I was born in 1984, right? And so it was one of those things that at the time I was like, I was giving all my energy to it. Wife had just had a new baby boy, my youngest son, who is now 13, and so. Wow, that was like, think about it, it's been minutes. But it was...
Start counting those years. Eh?
Right, yes, I mean, he was just born. And I was like, this is the time I felt like I had to like run at that point because the opportunities for those who look like me in the next step of politics, whether that was corporate government relations or something else, seemed like there was few of those opportunities to come. And I felt like, look, had all this experience, and now it was like, what else to do? And I knew I wanted to continue to serve in some capacity. And so ran for office. And then, for most people, they don't realize when you, typically in Philadelphia, most state rep races, or most races in general, are primaries. Mm-hmm. So you win your primary, you kind of like those 6 months running for primary, you kind of win and then kind of coast to the general.
Okay.
In this particular race, I had a primary opponent on the Democratic ticket side, but really was to try to unseat the incumbent, who was a Republican. Yeah. And so I had a tough primary that was successful, and we ultimately became a Democratic nominee, but then in the general was unsuccessful with unseating him. Okay. And so probably, lost by, like I think it was like 1,800 votes or something like that, which is like one precinct or one ward kind of in a district, in a state rep district, you figure it's like something like 70,000 people. Yeah. So to kind of put it in perspective of how close of a race it was. And I think for me, that moment, I always come back to that when I think about where my life is now and how it has twisted and turned, because that was such a pivotal moment of, some would be like, wouldn't have maybe that was successful, that you had a successful race, you ran a good campaign, even though you weren't victorious in essentially getting elected. But for me, it was one of my greatest failures because it took so much of emotional toll on me that it drastically changed who I was, as a father, as a friend, and how I saw really the business of politics in general, and how that you could do so much more than just be an elected official to really serve and help people in the community you live, or in general to the greater community in society.
What do you think was the big? So you mentioned that it changed you. Like, what do you think was the biggest change that moment had on you?
I think initially, I think it was in stages. I would put it in stages. So I think initially, when the race was over and the votes are cast, you find out you're unsuccessful. It was like almost like this weight that I had been carrying around, like came off, and all the emotion that I didn't realize that I was putting in finally kind of hit me. Yeah. So it took a while for me to really even talk about the race without being emotional, like crying about like losing, because it was less about the loss, but all the things that I had put in. Yeah. And so it made me think about all the hours and time of that, almost that first year of my youngest son's life, that I was not absent. Yeah. I was like out early, coming home super late. And so those things really impacted how the investment that you have to put into things, and making sure those investments are matched with the commitment that now you have as a father or a husband that you're taken away from. Yeah. And so that it made me think really long and hard about my next move and what things that I would do in life, that if I was going to do those things and I was going to sacrifice any time and effort away from being to me the most important job I had was to be a father and a husband, and so to be that leader, I wanted to not only show my boys that the things that you invest in bear fruit.
Yeah.
And that the things that if I were going to take time away from them or anything like that, it would be bearing fruit of my labor, opposed to this thing that felt like you put a lot of your energy into and was unsuccessful.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about that is you play sports.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting when you put a lot of work in, right, in the preseason and during the season, and the whole goal is to win a championship. And when you don't win that championship, or whenever you lose, you start to have those same questions that you were having, right? It's like, I poured all this into it.
Yeah.
I only really ever envisioned one outcome.
Yeah.
And so when the outcome isn't the outcome that you envisioned, it does change you in a way. And that's kind of, to your point. The interesting thing is the person on the other side is having the same exact,
Right.
like feeling. They
Right.
just have the opposite outcome. So, I love that the change for you was that you said, okay, I need to make sure that the juice is worth the squeeze now. If I'm going to put all this in and sacrifice this time from family and from other things that I deem important, I need to make sure that what I get out of it is really worth it. And I think that that's a tremendous, way to look at it. With that in mind, you mentioned that you have three sons.
Yeah.
What's the lesson for them that you want them to kind of take from how you handled the Crucible moment?
Yeah, I think that in those things, you always want to, I try to tell them that you always are looking for the lesson in the journey, right? And so even though you have these different steps and stages in life that you'll go through and things that you may not be successful in, you want to figure out what the lesson is that you want to take from that, right? And that in that adversity that you may have, what is the thing that really God was trying to teach you? What is the universe pulling at you, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think about that. I think back to that moment. I was also not only in being a father and a husband. Most recently, my mom has had some health challenges, particularly around dementia. And so for me, it makes me think back to all the times, including that moment, that I wasn't necessarily giving my all as a son, spending the time and energy, right, that you think that you're always going to have, right? And so those things are things that probably weigh on you as well, just in life. And so making sure that you find the lessons in the things that you are unsuccessful, whether that is from my older two, whether it's a class in college you didn't do well in, or for my youngest, losing a sports game, or not making the team in middle school basketball, or anything. What are the lessons in that you can gain from that, opposed to just taking it as I was unsuccessful?
Got it. Yeah, don't get stuck on that.
Don't get stuck on that.
So, we have, the saying, it's, the no losses, just lessons type of thing, right?
Yep, exactly.
So you can't get stuck on it. I'm curious how, from a family dynamic, right? Like you mentioned that when you lost the campaign back then, at that point your wife was pregnant, or no, you just had.
Yep.
So how did that loss and how you were dealing with it in that moment? How did that impact the family dynamic at that time? Because that's a really, when you first have a child, that's a really.
Yeah, I think it was. Look, I think the large part of it is that as a husband, father, you were the leader, right? And so you were setting the tone and the vision, and that you're trying to get your spouse, your wife, to buy into, especially early on, to buy into what you saying that this life will be, right? And a lot of times you're not even sure how you're gonna get to those things, right? I can remember telling Faye early on, I was like, oh, we're gonna get married, I'm gonna build you a house, I'm gonna buy you a car, I'm gonna do this thing. I was just telling.
This wasn't on your first date.
It actually was. It was. It was the very first date, and I was using the same story to talk to our youngest, like I said, Grant, who's 13, around manifestation now.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to set the tones of things that you really don't know how you're going to necessarily get there.
Yeah.
You have ideas, and so for me it was, I'm gonna run for office. I'm gonna be elected official. I had these dreams of like running for and following the footsteps of Congressman Fattah, right?
Yeah.
I had these dreams of like ultimately representing the same district as him and being very much his successor. And so life has a funny way of like having these plans and then you change. So I think she was completely supportive, because I was making it like this is the time and this is what I had to do and this. So there was the first campaign office was my living room, right? Yeah. And so it was every day, but I think the work ethic that she ultimately saw going in was that every day I would get up and my campaign manager at the time would come to the house.
Yeah,
it would just be me and him, and we would be in the living room, like making calls, putting things together before we had before we had money to even look for office, and then go from there. So I think those things would be the it affected in a positive way.
Okay.
Because even though I was unsuccessful, I think that ultimately showed that drive.
Yeah.
That drive, in that no matter what I put my mind to, that I ultimately, there would be some success out of it, because I think that we also had, it was one of the, probably at that time, one of the most expensive state house races in the Commonwealth. And so the massive money that we were able to raise without union support and like just grassroots support, it was very early on in that process.
Okay.
And we were able to be quite successful. And so we I think seeing that piece of it was like, okay, maybe that he will he'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But I think also ultimately though, I can remember being hard to, after losing, to get out the bed and figure out what that next thing is.
Yeah.
That getting to the next thing. And that I always try to tell people about that, and younger people when I talk to them about the race and wanting to be in politics, is particularly about running, is that getting to the next thing is just as hard as getting that campaign started, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it really was about, and that's kind of where the formation, you could see the formation, 2 years later, I was able to, incorporate the company, but was from a place of all these relationships, all these kind of connections, like how do you take that and monetize it and still offer some type of resources and services and skill sets?
Yeah.
How do you give that to those in this space, not just in a traditional lobbyist form, and it's the lobbyists, will focus on one particular thing and do that and kind of move on to the next thing, but really helping, whether it's elected officials, whether it's companies, whether it's nonprofits, to really figure out that strategic plan, right?
Yeah.
And that's how kind of from that campaign, I realized here's the skill sets that I have, and this is how they can serve others, not just whether it's campaign or elected officials or running for office again, like a lot of people thought I should do, but really building out this larger thing that has grown into Dunbar Public Affairs.
So look, what I love about that was you, and I think this is a thing that most people don't recognize, is you. So you went from a space of thinking of your skill set and how essentially it could serve you, right?
Yeah.
I want to run for office, to go and wait, I still have these skills, even though this failure, this setback happened, the skill set is still here. Now what happens if I apply that skill set on behalf of other people? Yeah. And that led you, I love that, like getting the idea of getting to the next thing, because that is the hardest part. Like when a crucible moment happens, a lot of time we're kind of stuck on that moment. We're asking why, what did I do wrong? You know, right? Like where was the left turn that should have been a right turn?
Yeah.
And in reality, a lot of times those crucible moments have much less to do with us and a lot more to do with the circumstances. So I love that idea of how do I get to the next thing, and then taking that and saying, oh, I know how I get to the next thing. No. I have skills, worth, right? I can apply that, and that's what's going to propel me forward.
Yeah, and I think just being, just turned 40, and so I realized I've been a lot more reflective lately.
Okay.
And, you know, I think growing up, people are like, oh, you got 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? Do a lot more listening, right?
And
talking, right? So I've been doing a lot less talking, but really more listening to myself, right?
Yeah.
Listening to, like, who am I, right? Like, who do I want to be, and what legacy do I want to leave, right?
Yeah.
Beyond just, you know, yes, as the father and the 3 boys, they will be my ultimate legacy and what I leave the world, right?
Yeah.
But like, what are the other things that are important? Like, what are the things? Like, it seems like a lot of times we're always chasing, particularly I think as men, chasing whatever career thing we're doing in order to attain wealth to then do the other things, right? Like whether that's investments, whatever the thing is, right?
Yeah.
But never really stopping to be reflective around, like, who am I? Like, who do I want to be, right? What is the work that I'm doing and that I'm really using my life for, saying about who I am and who I am to the world, right? Yeah. And so for me, like, sometimes it's, most recently in this season, instead of like always trying to get to the next thing, I just been like, I'm just gonna be still in this season.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be just still, like, in this, and allow this season to ride the wave.
Yeah.
Instead of always fighting against the wave, to like get up on the board, try to like figure out like how to ride the wave. And instead, I'm just gonna let the wave be the wave and enjoy what comes with it. Whether sometimes that storm may be rough, right? Or sometimes it may be, the sun may be out and the waters may be calm, but just being still in this season.
You know, honestly, I love that. I think that is, I was going to ask you for a little bit of advice to give to that's the perfect stopping point. I think recognizing that seasons are in fact seasons. Yeah. They change, and sometimes in that season, you have to be still and ride the wave, right? So it's going to be a crucible moment. It will come. It's a moment, right? It doesn't last forever. It comes and ends. So with that, Will, I appreciate you. Thanks for coming through, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is, you know, you've heard it here from my man Will Dunbar. Whatever season you're in, recognize if it is a time for you to stop or go. You're going to hit those crucible moments. You're going to have those seasons. They're going to come and go. And what you do next is essentially up to you. The moment doesn't define you, but you can surely and certainly define what you after that crucible moment. So with that being said, until next time, I bid you all adieu.
Thanks so much for watching this episode of The Crucible with Jeff Marshall. If you would like to be a guest on the program, let's be in touch. And be sure to stay connected with us through your favorite platforms. The Crucible with Jeff Marshall is part of the A Live Podcast Network and can be found in audio-only format wherever you listen to your podcasts. Production of this project was created by Gifted Entertainment, a full-service creative video production company.